times I've posed with books? Like, is that not weird? Why does it feel so weird all of a sudden? It's like I'm posing with another person, but it's just a stack of books. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad that you're here today. Today I'm going to be recommending you some wonderful books that I have read recently, and without further delay, let's just start talking about these books. So I haven't filmed a recent reads video in quite a while. I think it's been maybe 2 months, because I haven't been reading a ton. I have been writing and working on my writing. I'm working on my debut novel, and I just finished the first draft, and now I've started editing. So a lot of my time has been dedicated to my own book, so I haven't been reading a ton, but I have been reading some really great books, and of course I wanted to recommend them to you. So the first one that I read, I want to say maybe 2 months ago now, or a month and a half ago, is Big Tree by Brian Selznick. Brian Selznick is the writer and illustrator that I discovered when I was 9 years old, and he made me want to be the writer and illustrator that I am today. So I owe so much to him, and this is his most recent book titled Big Tree, and the way that he works, or the way that he creates his books, is so incredible because he tells the story in words and pictures, which he is just such a talented writer and illustrator, and I can never get over his work. He just keeps blowing me away with every book that he releases and creates. As you can see from this drawing of a dinosaur, this book takes place during the time of dinosaurs. I'm not sure what period exactly, but we are following 2 sycamore seeds where they have to leave their mother tree and go on a journey to find a safe place to set down roots and become big trees. And it's really about their adventure trying to navigate and survive this very dangerous world. And it's about the bond of the brother and sister seeds, as well as just appreciating where nature has gone and the way that the natural world worked all those years ago, and how incredible nature is and how impactful the historic periods that have led us to where we are today. It says, illustrated with nearly 300 pages of breathtaking pictures and brimming with humor, wonder, mystery, and a profound sense of hope, Big Tree is a mesmerizing journey and a singular reading experience for the whole family. It's just such... what he does with words and pictures will never not blow my mind, and I loved this book so much. Brian Selznick can really do no wrong in my eyes, and I highly recommend you give it a read, especially if you love nature and you love trees, or even if you're interested in scientific history about the natural world. I think you'd really enjoy this. Alright, as always, we are going to move my stars over so that we could pile the books here. The next 2 books are The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky and The Stranger by Albert Camus. I already spoke about these in my other videos, so I will link those in the cards so that you can hear my thoughts about these 2, but I really enjoyed them. They are so profound and thought-provoking and just incredible reads. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about them because I have spoken about them previously, and Emma and I are planning our live show probably for the middle of August because some scheduling things came up, and it's going to be well worth the wait. We promise. I'm sorry that we have been slightly dragging out the live show for The Brothers Karamazov and The Stranger. If you are joining us for the Game of Tomes live show, then just get excited because I think it's going to be a really fun one. So yes, sometime in August, don't know the exact date yet, but it will be happening, I promise. The next book I read is actually a story from this book, so I didn't read the whole book, but I read a story in it. This is The Wind's 12 Quarters, Stories by Ursula K. Le Guin. So I read The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas, and I first read this story in college when I was taking a short fiction class, and I loved it. I thought that it was such an incredible short story, but I hadn't read it since then until last month, or until July, and I again, loved it so much. It's a utopian society that their happiness is dependent on one thing, but it's this one thing that could be quite morally taxing for the citizens to accept. And so the citizens of Omelas, this city that they live in, this utopia, the citizens have to decide whether they can deal with the moral burden or if they will walk away from Omelas and they can't deal with the moral burden and they rather see what else is out there where they can live a more free life with peace of mind. So yes, I don't want to give too much away, but it is an incredible story and I'm really, really happy that I have reread it, and now I have a whole collection of Ursula K. Le Guin's short stories and I can't wait to read more from her. Speaking of Ursula K. Le Guin, though, the next book that I read, I picked up while I was in London. I went to London in July, which was so special, and the book that I picked up was Earthsea, the first 4 books in the Earthsea series by Ursula K. Le Guin. So I have heard so much about the Earthsea series, and when I saw this beautiful edition with the first 4 books, I immediately wanted to pick it up. And then I read the first book, which is just called Earthsea in the Earthsea series. I really enjoyed it, but I was expecting a little bit more from it, and I don't really know how to explain what was missing for me. I just felt like the stakes weren't getting me like really excited, and I just wasn't like, for a fantasy novel, basically it's about this wizard who has great power and then he gets mentored by this other very powerful wizard, and he goes to this school to learn about his wizardry and to kind of master his power. What I really loved was that naming things had a lot of power to them. When you give something a name, it's just very powerful in this world, and I really loved that because I love names. I think names give things such character, and I also think it's just the writer in me where one of my favorite parts about writing stories is just naming characters because it makes them feel real, and I really liked that aspect of the book, and I thought that the magic system was really interesting, but I just was expecting a little bit more from it, and I don't even know what. But yeah, I highly recommend reading it, especially if you are a fantasy lover. I don't read a lot of fantasy, so maybe that's my problem, but I do like certain fantasy. I don't know. I really enjoyed this. I just wanted a little bit more from it, so yes. The next book I listened to as an audiobook, and that is Cold Comfort Farm by Stella Gibbons. I have been wanting to read this book for quite a while just because I've heard about it here and there throughout the years of watching booktube videos. I always heard people recommend it, especially people who love classics, which is like me. I love classics, obviously. I think that's very clear from all my videos. And I enjoyed it. It was just kind of middle of the road for me. I thought it was okay, but it was just like not something that I think I would ever see myself reread. I do know a lot of people do like it. It is quite a quaint story. I feel like I'm going to butcher a synopsis, so I'm just going to read it off of Goodreads. So it says, when sensible, sophisticated Flora Post is orphaned at 19, she decides her only choice is to descend upon relatives in deepest Sussex. At the aptly named Cold Comfort Farm, she meets the doomed Starkadders. Cousin Judith, heaving with remorse for unspoken wickedness, Amos, preaching fire and damnation, their sons, lustful Seth and despairing Reuben, child of nature Elphine, and crazed old Aunt Ada Doom, who has kept to her bedroom for the last 20 years. But Flora loves nothing better than to organize other people. Armed with common sense and a strong will, she resolves to take each of the family in hand. A hilarious, ruthless parody of rural melodramas, Cold Comfort Farm is one of the best-loved comic novels of all time. And I would agree. I did really enjoy it, and rereading the synopsis, I did like certain parts of it, I really did. I thought the characters were so unique and really funny, but I definitely think if you are a classics lover and it sounds like something that you would like, I think a lot of people would like that book, so that's why I am recommending it. The next book I also listened to as an audiobook, and it was narrated by the illustrator, which is so interesting. So it was collected and illustrated by Chris Riddell, and that is Poems to Fall in Love With. It includes poems from Neil Gaiman, Nikita Gill, Carol Ann Duffy, E. E. Cummings, Shakespeare, Leonard Cohen, Derek Walcott, and many more. I love Chris Riddell's illustrations. He is such a talented illustrator, and as I was listening, I loved every single one that he... what is the word that I'm looking for? Basically, I loved all of them. And I feel like that's quite rare for a poetry collection because usually I like some more than others, but I really want to get my hands on a copy of this one because it's illustrated by one of my favorite illustrators, and I really loved all of them. And I loved that he had a focus on love poems. One of my favorites is from Hamlet, and it is Doubt Thou the Stars Are Fire. And when I listen to that, it's just one of my favorite parts of Hamlet. And yeah, there were, I think, another Shakespeare poem. I think there was one from Romeo and Juliet as well. And there was also poems from Neil Gaiman, which I just love. Chris Riddell works a lot with Neil Gaiman, so that was fun to see that as well. So you had a lot of like classic poems like Shakespeare, and then you have more modern poems like Neil Gaiman. So I liked the variety in the poetry as well. The next book that I read was Orlando by Virginia Woolf. So I fell in love with this book. I love Virginia Woolf so much. She is such an incredible writer. And this book was so ahead of its time, and it was so innovative, and it was so brilliant, and just what she did with transformation. Okay, I'm just gonna read the back because I feel like I could just like go on and on and on about this book. As his tale begins, Orlando is a passionate 16-year-old nobleman whose days are spent in rowdy revelry, there we go, filled with the colorful delights of Queen Elizabeth I's court. By the close, 3 centuries have passed, and he will have transformed into a 36-year-old woman in the year 1928. Orlando's journey is also an internal one. He is an impulsive poet who learns patience in matters of the heart, and a woman who knows what it is to be a man. Virginia Woolf's most unusual creation, Orlando is a fantastical biography as well as a funny, exuberant romp through history that examines the true nature of sexuality. It is insane. Like, the way that Virginia Woolf takes this character of this nobleman, Orlando, and transforms him into this woman, Orlando, who really experiences many, many years throughout history. So many years pass in the time that Orlando is alive, and it doesn't really make sense, but Virginia Woolf makes it make sense. It's so weird. I don't even know how to explain it because it's so bizarre. But what she does with this narrative is crazy, and it's so unique, and it's unlike anything I've ever read, and I thought it was brilliant. So I highly, highly, highly recommend it. The way that she describes London, especially because I read this after I came back from London, and it was so exciting to be able to picture everything that Virginia Woolf was writing about. Obviously, it's set in the past. When she was writing about London, it was past London, so a bit different, but I really loved that I could connect to it because I read it right after coming back from London myself. So it was really special in that way as well, and I just think this is one of the most, if not the most unique book I've ever read. The excitement of this book, the innovation of this book really kept me so engaged, and it was very fast-paced as well. Like, there were some slower parts, but I read this very quickly, and I just loved the reading experience. Virginia Woolf is just an icon. I'm going to move these over so that I don't bump into them with this book. So the next book that I picked up in London is The Last Tree, A Seed of Hope by one of my favorite contemporary artists and illustrators, Luke Adam Hawker. So this is his most recent book. It was just published in the US, but I picked it up in London before its US release, and I was so excited to see it that it was already released in the UK. And Luke Adam Hawker is an incredible illustrator. I follow him on Instagram. Everything that he does is so just mesmerizing. Watching him illustrate is so mesmerizing. So he works mainly in pen and ink, and he works a lot with very, very thin line, and you can see that in these illustrations. Oh, my receipt from Hatchard's fell out. So I will just show you a little flip through. These illustrations are just absolutely breathtaking, as I've said. I feel like I keep saying breathtaking, but all of this is breathtaking. All these books are breathtaking in their own way. So like Big Tree by Brian Selznick, this is also, as you can guess from the cover and the title, about trees. And the back says, "Imagine a world without trees. A world that is in many ways like our world, but where magnificent canopies, tree climbing, and leaves rustling in the breeze are now only distant memories. Until a young girl comes along, a girl who is brave and spirited and willing to follow where her imagination takes her. Through Olive's adventures in the world of trees, we are reminded of nature's extraordinary power and beauty, and her actions ultimately sow the seeds of new life in her own world." From the best-selling author of Together, which is his first book, The Last Tree is a powerful evocation of the fragility of our natural world and a magnificent celebration of its beauty. So again, if you love trees, if you love nature, if you love beautifully illustrated books, I highly recommend this book as well as Big Tree. They are both so stunning and just a love letter to nature, a love letter to trees, and as a tree lover myself, I just could not love these books any more than I do. So highly, highly, highly recommend checking out Luke Adam Hawker's work and his beautiful books. The second to last book I listened to as well as an audiobook, and it was 4 minutes long. It is titled Instructions by Neil Gaiman, and I loved it. First of all, it was narrated by Neil Gaiman. I love that Neil Gaiman narrates so many, if not all of his books, because I could listen to him all day long. I love his voice. And what I wasn't expecting from this book was for it to make me so emotional. It's basically this book that is spoken or written as instructions of like what to do if you get to a certain place. It's almost like metaphorical to going throughout life, and when life throws things at you, what to do when you are dealing with that situation or when you're in that situation. It basically just felt like instructions that were steeped in metaphor for things that could happen in your life along the way. And it was so beautiful and so fantastical and imaginative, and just Neil Gaiman is such a talented writer. And in 4 minutes, he made me so emotional, and I just think that that is a true sign of a very gifted writer, and Neil Gaiman is just so amazing. So I loved Instructions. I highly recommend listening to the audiobook, and I also really want to get my hands on a physical copy because it is illustrated. I forget who illustrates it. Illustrated by Charles Vess, who is such a talented illustrator, yes. So I definitely want to get a copy of Instructions. And the last book I started last night, that is The Awakening by Kate Chopin. We are reading Orlando and The Awakening for the Game of Tomes book club for July and August. Yes. And I just started The Awakening, so I don't have too many thoughts about it so far, but I will read the back. It says, "This selection includes The Awakening, her novella of a married woman's sexual liberation that caused outrage on its publication at the end of the 19th century. Kate Chopin's stories of frustrated lives and forbidden passions explored women's experiences in a way that had never been done before." And that's why we're reading them together. So Game of Tomes, basically, our mission is to pick 2 books by different authors that are about different things but have similar themes. And so Orlando was very much like unique. It challenged sexuality, and I think that this also, The Awakening, challenges female sexuality and the woman's role, especially because it's a classic, so in the past, as well as, you know, sexuality and gender roles for Orlando. So I think that these 2 books are going to be really interesting to discuss with each other, which is why we picked them. I'm liking it. I'm liking it. I don't want to judge it already. But I think I prefer Orlando so far. I think I'm going to prefer Orlando. But that could change because I only just started it. I'm only a few chapters in. So yes, very excited to keep reading this one and see how my opinion forms or changes. So yes, these are all the books that I read recently and that I highly recommend you check out. They are all so wonderful, and I would love to know what books you have been enjoying and recommend, because I am always looking for more book recommendations. So thank you so much for watching this video and being so kind and supportive. My last video before this one was me filming myself finishing my first draft of my novel, and your response and your kindness could not mean more to me than it does. And I can't thank you all enough for all of your positivity and saying that you want to read my book and that you're looking forward to reading it, and your support and enthusiasm and kindness. Just, I really can't say thank you enough. But I will say it. Thank you. I will say it a million times, because you guys are the reason that I can do this and try and make this book a reality. You guys are the best people ever, so thank you so much for being here and being so kind and wonderful. Let me know how you're doing, let me know what books you've been enjoying recently, and just thank you for the millionth time. I will see you soon in another video. As always, happy reading.